my name is Katie Newman, and I get to be the one to tell you today's Bible story. It's from the book of Judges. We're still learning about the Judges, and last week we learned about Gideon, who brought peace to the Israelites through what he did and how he led his armies. But again, the Israelites turned away from God, and so because of that sin, they were ruled by the Philistines. So right now the Israelites are under the Philistines, and what the story is about is a man named Samson. So how Samson's life started is that an angel of God came to Samson's mother and told her that she was going to have a son. And he said that he would be special, he would be dedicated to God, and that he would be set apart to be used by God in a special way. And at that time, when people were set apart like this to be used by God, they had to follow a certain set of rules. And one of the rules is that they could never cut their hair. So as Samson grew up, his hair just got longer and longer, and his mother and father never cut it. So eventually, Samson came to the point where he wanted to get married. And he saw a Philistine woman that he wanted to marry. And the Philistines were their enemies. So do you think that his mom and dad liked that? They didn't. They tried to convince him to not do it, but he insisted. And so his mother and father and him, they went out to meet this woman that he wanted to marry. And on the way, a lion came charging at them. And Samson approached the lion, and God gave him amazing strength and courage. And Samson killed the lion with his bare hands. That's how much strength God gave him. And he protected his family. That was just when they were meeting the Philistine woman. But then they went back home, and when the time for the wedding came, they went back to where she lived. And on the way back, Samson noticed the lion's body still lying there, and he went over to see. And you would not believe what he found. He found honey inside the lion's body. A hive of bees was living there and making honey. So Samson thought it would be a good idea to take some of the honey, and he ate some, and he gave some to his parents. That's important later on, so remember that part about him eating honey. So when they got to where the Philistine woman was, they had a celebration, and they had the wedding feast. And something that they liked to do a long time ago at a feast was tell riddles. So Samson gave a riddle to the Philistines, and he said, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." Do you know what the answer to the riddle is? He was talking about the lion and the honey that he took from the lion's body. And so the Philistines were puzzled, and they could not figure out Samson's riddle. And I think he was feeling pretty good about himself. And so the Philistines decided to force his new wife to tell them what his riddle meant. And she did. And when they gave Samson the correct answer, he was so furious that she had told them and betrayed him that he decided to strike down 30 of the Philistine men. And then he left her, and he went home. And the Philistines thought, Samson must not want to marry her, so they let her marry another man. And then later, Samson came back, and he was looking for his wife, and the Philistines said, "We allowed her to marry someone else. She's not here." And again, he had a horrible temper, and he decided to do something horrible to the Philistines. He lit fire to all their fields, and he burned up all their crops. It was a huge fire. So after Samson did this horrible thing where he burned up all the fields because of his own anger, how would God be able to use somebody like that to deliver his people? Well, years later, Samson went to a Philistine city where he fell in love with another Philistine woman named Delilah. And when the Philistines found that out, they went to Delilah and they offered her a lot of money for her to tell them how Samson got his strength. By this time, everybody knew that he had amazing supernatural strength, but they didn't know it was coming from God. So they wanted to know so that they could take his strength away from him. And Delilah accepted their offer. And she kept asking Samson, "What is the source of your strength? How are you like this?" And Samson wouldn't give her the right answer. He kept tricking her. And she kept asking. And finally, Samson said, "It's because I've been dedicated to God, and the symbol of that is my long hair. I've never cut my hair." So when he fell asleep, Delilah told the Philistine men. They came into Samson's room and they cut his hair, and immediately his strength left him. And because he was weak, they were able to capture him and put him in prison. So while he was in prison, they made him do hard labor, and they made him perform for them when they had feasts. One time there was a big feast in the temple, and all the Philistine rulers were there. And there were 3,000 Philistines there celebrating and saying, "We have victory over Samson, over the Israelites." And Samson was standing between two big, huge stone pillars that were holding up the temple. And he thought, one last time, I'm going to pray. And he prayed and he asked God, "Please give me back my strength this one last time." And he placed his hands on those two stone pillars, and God answered his prayer. And his last words were, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he pushed the stone pillars over, and the whole temple came crashing down, killing everybody who was there. So that is the end of the story of Samson. And the thing I love about the story of Samson is that he was not perfect. He disobeyed God. He was really angry. He had a horrible temper, and he didn't always honor God. So he wasn't perfect, but God still was able to deliver Israel from out of the hands of the Philistines through him. And the second thing I love about this story is that it shows that Samson gave his life to rescue the Israelites. And it reminds me of Jesus, who gave his life to rescue us from sin. Thank you for joining me, and please come back next week where we can learn about Ruth.